Perfect. Perfect.
All right, everybody, what's going on? And welcome to a Christmas edition of SWAC Talk. This is the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Sea Wells. And I really wasn't going to do a show today, man, but it's Christmas and everybody done ate, everybody full, everybody relaxing. So figured I'd get in the lab and drop a video for y'all, man. I did before the season started, I did a show where I ranked all the coaches from 1 to 12. So I decided to revisit that and re-rank them and see what see where any changes happen. This is strictly my opinion. If you got a different opinion, feel free to let me know in the comments. I will put the link to the video, the past video, at the end of the video, in the box that goes up after the video is over, and I'll also link it in the description if you hadn't seen it before, so you can check it out. Hit those socials. Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to help us get to over 1,200 subscribers. Like the video, share it, and feel free to comment and hit that join button to become a member. By around the beginning of the new year, we'll be giving away some free memberships. So if you want to be down with that, we'll let you know how to make that happen. We have a lot of great perks. You can check it out and see if there's anything that you're interested in. Otherwise, you can hit that super thanks button in the chat, or you can donate to the show using the Cash App $Swag Talk. So let's go ahead and get into this. Before I start my rankings, I just want to give out a little bit of a criteria, or housekeeping, whatever you want to call it. I ranked all the coaches, like I said, from 1 to 12, and basically any coach that got fired, or got fired, left their job, however you want to put it, basically got fired, and don't really have a new destination as a head coach. I put them at the bottom of the list. Now I did keep Coach McNair in the top portion of the list because I feel like, even though he left TSU, he still had a great season before he left. So I kind of, fudged around with it, but it's my list. So, I can do that. Just your list, you can do what you want, but I did it that way. So let's go ahead and start with number 12. I put Clarence McKinney from Texas Southern at number 12. Now, that doesn't mean he's the worst coach out of the 12. That just means he's not there anymore. And out of the 3 coaches who left their jobs that I've put at that point, I thought he had the season that ranked them the lowest. He was my number 9 coach in my preseason. TSU finished with a record of 3-8. They were 2-6 in conference. Really, just not a great season for the Tigers. Had a lot of potential. Had a lot of talent. Lost a lot of close games. They lost a 3-point game, the Prairie View in overtime. They lost the FAMU by 10 at home. They lost to Southern by 6 in overtime. They lost to Jackson State by 2 on the road, and then they blew a big lead against Pine Bluff and lost that game by 1 at home. Just a lot of missed opportunities there. That game against Alcorn really was a game that showed that this team could do some great things, but they just never really had that effort for the bulk of the season. Even that win against Bethune-Cookman was a 3-point victory that they had to hold on to win. Just never really, like I said, just never really had that, that breakout game before the Alcorn game, which by that point it was too little too late. This was a team who a lot of people felt could be a contender in the division, and to basically start off 0-4, just really wrecked their season. The team did have injuries, so you can't really fault them for that. But that's part of it, and they just couldn't really couldn't really get out of their own way in crunch times of games. I mean, their offense averaged 26 points a game, which is which is like fifth in the league. Defensively, they weren't that great. I think defensively they took a little step back from last season, but the offense was still pretty solid. They were fifth in total offense. They were first in rushing offense. They had a great running back in Ladarius Owens, who ran for over 1,500 yards. The passing game, wasn't spectacular. But they played Jace Wilson, who took over for Andrew Body after he went down with injury, and they still threw the ball fairly decently. Um, they just never really put it together like it seemed like they were last season. Defensively, the interceptions were down. They were one of the top teams in the league in interceptions last year. This season, they dropped. They dropped down to 11th. They only had 5 interceptions this season. They only had 6 fumble recoveries. So they only forced 11 turnovers as a defense, and they didn't really get a lot of. They generated pretty decent pass pressure, but they just never really put it all together. And they had so many tough losses that it just made it hard for them to finish with a better record. And 3-8 is a step back from last season. And Coach McKinney got let go due to his contract running out, so that's why they're at number 12. My number 11 coach is Coach Eric Dooley from Southern. He was my number 4 coach in the preseason, and before you say anything, I really, like I said, when I did my preseason rankings, I didn't rank any coach who hadn't coached at that team yet above the bottom half of the rankings. So you kind of had to slot coaches, a few spots above, and that's why he was at that point. Because I mean, obviously coming out of the 2022 season, which they made the SWAC championship, there's still a lot of questions about Southern. And this season, the team, really was up and down all year. The offense never got going, and he was let go after the 10th game of the season. And when you look at this team, the offense was the sore point of this team. Their high point total against a non Lincoln team was 28 points, which they scored against Bethune-Cookman. They scored 27 against Pine Bluff and 27 against Grambling. Those were the highest point totals of the season. Just never, an offense just never really got going. And they finished 6-5 and 5-3 in conference, but just never really put it all together offensively. Like I said, offense was the big sticking point. Offense gave up 37 sacks. They threw the ball for 215 yards, which was 4th in the league, and they were 10th in the league in rushing offense at 111 yards per game. Total offense, same thing, 8th at 327 a game. And scoring offense, they were 6th at 23 points per game. But the defense was a lot better than that. They were top 3 in scoring defense, top 3 in rushing in total defense, top 3 in rushing defense, top 5 in passing defense. They were top 5 in sacks by defense, and they were ninth in interceptions with 7. So they this was a mixed bag of a team. The defense did the heavy lifting. The offense just never really got it going. And with your coach getting fired after 10 games in his second season, that's gonna rank you low. And that's why Southern ended up. That's why Coach Dooley ended up at number 11, dropping down from number 4. My last coach who is not at his current job anymore, and that's Hugh Jackson. He's number 10 on this list. He was number 7 in the preseason. Grambling is a team that I look at as a team that could have been a lot better than what they were. They started off 0-2, losing to Hampton and LSU. They beat Florida Memorial. Then they kind of went on a nice little run went on a nice little 2-game winning streak in conference play, beating Texas Southern and Prairie View before they lost to Alcorn, which started a 2-game losing streak, losing to Alcorn and Alabama A&M before they beat Bethune-Cookman. and then they would lose two out of their last three games against Alabama State and Southern, sandwiched in between a victory over Pine Bluff. So this team, they finished 5-6, 4-4 in conference. Coach Jackson got fired at the end of the season. Um, they had some potential offensively, especially. They were third in the league in scoring offense. They were second in the league in total offense. They were second in the league in rushing offense. They were fifth in the league in passing offense. Um, so they really were a solid offense. They were able to do a lot of things defensively. They had some problems, although they were second in passing defense. They were 10th in rushing defense, and they were seventh in total defense and scoring defense. They were ninth. So this team was great on offense, not as good on defense. Although the defense did have their moments. A lot of people looked at this team as not being able to make the plays when they needed to, and that was one of the reasons why people were not happy with the job that Coach Jackson was doing. So him basically having an opportunity sitting at 2-0 in the conference early and dropping out of the race by mid-season really did not sit well. And when you do those kind of things, that's going to drop you in any ranking. And so even if he had not got fired, he probably would have finished probably about the same spot, like 7 or 8. But getting fired, that dropped them on down to number 10. Our next three coaches are the newbies, the guys who basically were in their first year um, for the most part. Three out of the four new coaches. Um, they're the next three coaches in that mix. Number 9 is Alonzo Hampton from UAPB. Now you can probably shuffle these coaches any way that you want out of these three. There's no right or wrong order for these three coaches, but I felt like out of the three, out of Pine Bluff Valley and Bethune-Cookman, I thought Pine Bluff really was the team that struggled the most. They started off pretty solid. They lost to Tulsa in a game that was really close in the first half. Before late in the first half when Tulsa started pouring on the points, they lost a late. They lost to Tennessee State on a late block field goal. They beat Miles by 1 point, so they were sitting at 1-2 before they lost to Alabama A&M by 7 in a game that they were in and had a chance to pull ahead in, but they turned the ball over. And then the bottom fell out this team. They lost to Southern by 27. They lost to Valley 42-17. They lost to Alcorn 31-7. Lost to Jackson State 40-14. They lost to Prairie View 38-14. They lost to Grambling 43-14. Before they finally picked up their first victory of the season, beating Texas Southern 35-34. That was a game they trailed by double digits before they made a comeback and won that game. They actually fell behind really big like they normally did. They were down 34-13 going into the fourth quarter. They scored 22 points in the fourth quarter to win this game. So basically, this team just never really was able to make anything happen. They finished 1-7 in conference, 2-9 overall. The offense never really got going. They were next to last in scoring offense. They were last in scoring defense. Total offense, they were 10th. Total defense, they were last. Rushing offense, they were 8th. Rushing defense, they were last. Passing offense, they were 11th. Passing defense, they were 11th. They didn't really protect the quarterback well. They were 11th in sacks allowed. They were 11th in sacks generated by their defense, and they were last in interceptions with 4. So this was the epitome of a team that was basically to me a year zero team. They just were trying to find things that work, and they seemed like they had some things going on positively, but injuries to their running back room really kind of set them back and made it tough for them. But they didn't, they ultimately didn't win very many games, and they didn't win the second game until the last game of the season. So even though that happened, Coach Hampton went from number 11 to number 9. So he jumped because I dropped the coaches that got fired down to last. he probably would have been ranked at 12. Otherwise, not to say that he didn't do his best on his job. I thought he did a good job with generating energy in the program and just optimism and everything. But on the field, wins and losses just really kind of set them back a bit. My number 8 coach was formerly number 10 in the preseason, and that's Kendrick Wade from Valley. Again, you're looking at a team who didn't really have a lot of success. Got off to a really rough start, losing to Central State, losing to Delta State, losing to North Carolina Central. FAMU beat them, Prairie View beat them. Before they finally won their first game against Pine Bluff, then they would pretty much um, lose out the rest of the way. So not a great season for Valley. Not a lot was expected for this from this team either. They finished 1-7 and 1-10 overall. Just finished finished with a 5 game losing streak. Had a big losing streak to open the season. Um, Beating Pine Bluff probably is the difference in this ranking. You know what I mean? That Texas Southern win for Pine Bluff was great, but Valley was able to, really have their way in that game. They still struggled mightily. Statistically, they were last in scoring offense. They were seventh in scoring defense, so they weren't that bad. They were last in total offense. They were 10th in total defense. They were last in rushing offense. They were ninth in rushing defense. They were 10th in passing offense and 10th in rush in passing defense. They were last in sacks allowed. They were last in sacks generated. They only had 12 sacks as a defense. They were 10th in interceptions. Um, they were eighth in fumble recovery. So they just never really put it together. But I felt like a lot of what I give Valley a lot of credit for was a lot of off season things. I thought they recruited well. I thought they generated a great energy for the program, and I thought they did a good job of selling what they had. Once it became time for the season, they got a little rocky, but I thought they still stayed the course. Um, Now it's going to be interesting to see how they put things together moving into the second year. Should be a lot better. I don't know again if it's going to translate to wins and losses, but I thought that they still were a little bit more competitive than Pine Bluff, although they did have their share of blowouts. Um, I thought they just, kind of looked a little bit better at times in games, and that's why I had them at number 8, Coach Wade. Number 7 is Coach Woody, Raymond Woody from Bethune Cookman. I had him at my number 12 spot because I felt like coming into the season, Bethune Cookman was the biggest wild card out of the 3 teams. I mean, they didn't get a coach until late. We didn't know what they were bringing in. We really didn't know what they were returning, and they just seemed like a total wild card. And they still had a kind of a rough season, finishing the season at 2-6, 3-8 overall. But they were a team who was kind of surprising defensively in conference play. They took a couple early season FBS losses to Miami and Memphis. They sandwiched that in between a victory over Savannah State. They lost to Jackson State by 6. They lost to Bama State by 5. They lost to Texas Southern by 3. They lost to Southern by 10. They lost to Groundling by 14 before they beat Valley by 13. And then they beat Alabama A&M 31-14 in a game that they ran the ball for over 400 yards as an offense. And then they lost to FAMU 24-7 to close out the season. That, like I said, their defense really was a key cog on this team, and I thought they were one of the more underrated defenses. They were 6th in scoring defense. The offense was 10th in scoring offense. Total defense, they were 8th. Total offense, they were 11th. Rushing offense, they were 9th. Rushing defense, they were 8th. Passing offense, they finished last. Passing defense, they were 9th. Sacks generated by their defense, they were 8th. Sacks allowed, they were 9th. Interceptions, they finished 7th with 9. Um, and they had 8 fumble recoveries, which was 5th in the league. Their defense played pretty well. They kept them in a lot of games. The offense just never really had an identity. They played multiple quarterbacks all season. Never really could generate the one guy to get the offense going. The running game never really fully clicked. Although they, in the next to last game they really clicked, but for the most part they didn't really ever click as a running game. The passing game, same thing. Um, but I thought they did a good job of always being competitive in games, not really getting blown out a lot in conference play, and that makes things look a lot better. And that's why I put Coach Woody at number 7 on my list. Number 6 is Coach Maynor from Alabama A&M. He was my third ranked coach. The Bulldogs had a really rough season this season, finishing the season at they finished at 3-5 in conference and 5-6 overall. Had a decent start to their season. Um, they lost to Vanderbilt to open up the season. And they would go on to beat Lane. They put 50 points on Lane. They dropped a 10-point loss to Southern. Then they beat Pine Bluff. They put another 50 piece on Tuskegee. They lost to Jackson State in a game that they fell behind big and kind of cut it down to 15 at the end. They blew out Grambling, which was a big game for them. And then they lost to Bama State in the Magic City Classic. And then they would go on to lose their next 2 games after that, losing to Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman before they wrapped up their season with a 9-point victory over Valley. Um, like I said, this team just never really they never had any consistency. Honestly, they finished the season scoring second in scoring offense and eighth in scoring defense. Total offense, they were third. Total defense, they were sixth. Rushing offense, they were fifth. Rushing defense, they were sixth. Passing offense, they were third. Passing defense, they were eighth. Sacks allowed, they finished the season fifth. Sacks generated by defense, they were ninth. Interceptions, they were fifth. Fumble recoveries, they were first. So this team really should not have finished where they finished. Um, that a couple games really hurt them. Losing the Magic City Classic obviously kind of was a game that got away from them. Their Southern loss, the offense couldn't move the ball on the ground. The defense played a great game in that game, but they just couldn't really score the ball. Other than that, losing to Bethune-Cookman as a game definitely that can always hurt you. A team that has been struggling should not be able to have their way with you on the ground like they did. And then a by the numbers victory over Valley to close out the season kind of made things look a little bit better, but not a team. This was a team that could score points, but they also had a lot of games where they just didn't really look that good. So they were the definition of inconsistency, and that really put them in a bad spot. And that's why Coach Mano finishes at 6, down from 3. Number 5, I wasn't really sure where to put Coach McDowell. He was number 5 in the preseason. He's number 5 here. Yes, they won the West, but I feel like Prairie View never really lived up to what they could have been. Yes, they won a division, but kind of to me, winning the West is kind of like just survival of the fittest. Whoever is standing last is the team that wins. Kind of like playing a game. A game of Uno. Whoever get ready cards first win. It just never really. They had their moments. A big comeback against TSU to open the season was a great thing. They got blown out against Abilene Christian. They got blown out against SMU. And they beat Alcorn, which was really probably the reason why they ended up being able to go to the SWAC championship, because they had the tiebreak over Alcorn. They would lose to Grambling. They would beat Valley. They would lose to Houston Christian in a shutout fashion. Offense did nothing. They would lose to FAMU 45-7. They would beat Pine Bluff and Southern to kind of get themselves back in the race. And then they would beat Bama State to close out the season and win the division outright. Well, win the division with a share of it and go to SWAC championship game and lose to FAMU in a game that was close but not close. So they were a team who I thought had some potential. And they finished the season at 6-2 in conference, 6-6 overall. Just never really had just for a division champ. They never really had very many solid breakout games to me. Um, Even the victory over Southern, they it took a great defensive effort for them to hold Southern basically stymied in the second half for them to score 10 points and win that game. Um, Offensively, they were ninth in scoring offense. They were 10th in scoring defense. They were seventh in rushing in total offense. They were 11th in total defense. They were fourth in rushing offense, which was down from last season. They were fifth in rushing defense. Passing offense, they were ninth. They were last in passing defense. They generated 19 sacks as a defense, which was 10th. They were eighth in sacks allowed with 27. They had eight interceptions, which was eighth in the league, and they had four fumble recoveries, which was last in the league. So if you look at these numbers of this team, they just never really stood out, and a lot of it is actually skewed because their three non-conference games were none of them were close, and so that really makes things go a little bit worse for them in the numbers. But even in conference play, I didn't think they were that great there either. That's to me is why even I kind of held them steady, even though they did win the division. Um, Even when you look at conference play, they scored 24 points a game. They gave up 25. They just never, they still never really stood out even in conference play. So that's what basically put them in that spot. Total offense, they still were seventh in conference play. They were 11th in conference play in total defense. Um, they were third in the league in rushing offense and conference play. They were sixth in rushing defense, and they were seventh in passing offense and conference play, and 11th in passing defense. So even then, the numbers still weren't great. They just, they basically did enough to get where they needed to get, and basically, survival of the fittest. So not a great season, even though they did win the division. I never really felt like they had the division in hand for any real stretch of the season, and that's what kind of made Coach McDowell be right there. My number four coach is Coach Eddie Robinson from Alabama State. He moved up from sixth. Now this was a team who is the definition of a team who kind of always found a way. Defensively, Bama State had one of the best defenses in the league. Offensively, they were not ever anything above a mid offense. They had some great individual talent, like Keyshawn Johnson was one of the top receivers in the league. Damon Stewart was a solid quarterback in the second half of the season, but they just never really were able to make a lot of things happen. I mean, if you look at their point totals for the season, they scored 10 in the first game, 17, 10, 20, 19, 24 in a victory over Jackson State, 31 against Bama A&M, 17 against Grambling, 20 against Valley, and then 14 against Prairie View before they scored 41 against Tuskegee. So they just never really offensively got going. But this was the team who started off the season at 1-1. Really, they started off season 1-2, losing 1-3, losing to Miles, Alcorn, and FAMU before they put together a nice winning streak, beating Bethune-Cookman, beating Jackson State, beating Alabama A&M, beating Grambling, and beating Valley, winning 5 games before they won, before they lost to Prairie View. So they found a way to put themselves in the position to finish at 7-4 in conference, and they finished 5-3 overall, and that was an improvement for what I thought Bama State would be this season. Even with the offense being what it was, they still found a way. I mean, they were eighth in scoring offense, they were first in scoring defense, total offense. They were ninth total defense. They were second rushing offense. They were 11th rushing defense. They were second passing offense. They finished seventh passing defense. They were third. Uh, Offensively, they only allowed 15 sacks, which was second. They were sixth in the league in sacks as a defense with 25, and they finished the season with 11 interceptions, which was sixth, and 11 fumble recoveries, which was third. So their defense was spectacular all year. The offense was kind of hit or miss. They were able to take advantage of having a great defense and being able to score with short fields and not really a lot of explosive plays, but they found, like I said, they just found a way to make things happen, and that can get you pretty far, and it got them further than I thought it would, and that's why I feel like um, Coach Robinson was able to be bumped up. But a couple of those losses were kind of puzzling, so that kind of that kind of hurts, and never really felt like this is a stable team. Not to say that they can't be, it just didn't really feel like it to me, and that's the difference that's keeping him out of the top three. Now 2 and 3, I went back and forth on it. I'm uh, I'm I'm gonna go with Coach McNair at three. Um, Not necessarily because Coach Taylor was really better than him, which is my second coach, and I'm sure y'all know who number one is. But Coach McNair was my number one coach coming into the season, and I don't think he did a lot to hurt that. Um, the fact, I mean, his contract ran out. That's why he left Alcorn. But that Texas Southern loss really just kind of kind of doesn't, you know, when you're a team who's in the mix for the division and you really got it, and you just got to win out, losing a game like that really hurts, and that's to me is kind of what flip flopped them. Yes, yes they beat Jackson State in the season, so you can look at it that way. I just, that TSU loss just doesn't sit right with me. This team finished 6-2 in conference, 7-4 overall. Kind of took them a little bit to get going, losing to Southern Miss and Stephen F. Austin before they beat McNeese, and then they lost to Prairie View. So they were at 1-3 before they beat Alcorn. They would go on a nice little winning streak, beating Alcorn, Grambling. Beating Prairie View, Grambling, excuse me, beating Alabama State, Grambling, Pine Bluff, Valley, and Southern before they lost to TSU, and then they would win the last game against JSU. But having that chance to win a division and losing the way you did, that kind of sets it back a little bit. And plus the fact that he's no longer there. Um, I'm not punishing him for having his contract run out. That's why I didn't put him in the bottom of the list like all the other coaches that left. But I just felt like when you look at the end of the season, just really that one game just to me just did it for me. Other than that, he would have been my number two coach easily. I thought he did a great job with getting the offense kind of to shape themselves in more of a passing offense than they were last season. They finished seventh in scoring offense. The defense was great, finishing fourth in scoring defense. Total offense, they were sixth. Total defense, they were fifth. Rushing offense, they were sixth. Rushing defense, they were fourth. Passing offense, they were sixth. Passing defense, they were sixth. Defensively, they allowed 17 sacks, which was fourth. They were second in sacks generated by their defense with 30. Interceptions, they were really great there with 15, which was third in the league. And fumble recoveries, they finished the season number 6 with 8. So they did a great job of forcing turnovers. And they weren't that bad turning the ball over. Like I said, 2 and 3 really could have been flip flop no matter how you want to look at it. I just kind of weigh a couple of things more for TC Teller this season than I did for Coach McNair. But there's no indictment on the job that McNair did getting this team back into the hunt for the division. Like I said, that TSU game just didn't sit right with me, and that kind of hurt me a bit. Number two, obviously, is TC Taylor from Jackson State. He was my number 8 coach in the preseason. I kind of, like I said, I kept the coaches who were first year new head coaches. I kept them all pretty much toward the bottom, and I feel like he had a better job that he was stepping into than the other three, and he was recruiting well at that point. So That's the main reason why I put him at 8 instead of 9 to open up the season. Um, Bringing in so many guys that they did, and still being able to finish with a 7-4 record, is a good testament to the job that he did. They lost some tough games. They lost to FAMU, and they lost to Texas State, obviously, and Bama State was able to um, get them on their homecoming before closing out that season with a loss to Alcorn. In between that, they opened up the season winning against South Carolina State in solid fashion, 37-7. They would beat Southern by 13 points. They would beat Bethune-Cookman by 6. They would beat Bama A&M by 15. They would beat Valley 21-6 in a game that they led 21-0 before Valley scored late in the fourth. They would beat Pine Bluff 40-14, and then it would beat TSU 21-19 before they lost to Alcorn. But they beat everybody that they should have beat. That they didn't lose to anybody who had a worse record than them. Alcorn was 7-4. Bama State was 7-4. FAMU was they finished the season 11-1. Um, they finished the season 12-1. And then Texas State was the FBS team. So they didn't lose to anybody that they should have beaten. They didn't really beat a lot of teams that they should have beaten, which is kind of one of the things that maybe you can if you wanted to flip flop 2 and 3, you could hold that on them. But I thought with so much turnover on this team, I thought they still were a solid team. I mean, they were fourth in scoring offense, fifth in scoring defense. Total offense, they led the league in total offense. They were fourth in total defense. They were third in rushing offense, which really was a big thing for them to be able to run the ball as well as they did. They were seventh in rushing defense. They were second in passing offense. Passing defense, they were fourth. Sacks allowed, they were seventh with 27. Sacks generated, they were third with 29. They led the league in interceptions with 17, and they were 11th in fumble recoveries with 5. So they were a lot better statistically than a lot of people get them credit for last season. They weren't really flashy. The offense never, the offense was kind of up and down. They had games where they ran the ball really well. They had games where they threw the ball really well. They didn't really turn the ball over a lot, and they did a great job of forcing interceptions and getting sacks. So they were still a good team. 7-4 coming off for the last 2 seasons. May not look that great. Losing a lot of guys and bringing in a lot of new guys. 7-4. I thought this team would be a 8-3, 7-4 team anyway. So they finished kind of in that mix. So you have to reward the job that he did with a new team and being a first time head coach in a pressure situation like that. So that's why he finishes with the number 2 spot. And my last spot is number 1. That's Willie Simmons. He moved up from 2 to 1. Basically did everything that you asked for this team to do. Won the division, won the conference, won the Celebration Bowl. Um, they finished the season with a 11-game winning streak. Their only loss was to South Florida, which they lost that game by 14 points. They had a chance late to kind of cut into that lead, but couldn't get it done and lost that game by only 14. And other than that, a lot. They like I said, they ripped off 11 straight, beat West Florida by 21, beat Bama State by 13, beat Valley by 24, beat Southern by 7, beat Texas Southern by 10, beat Prairie View by 38, beat Alabama A&M by um, by 14, beat Lincoln by 28, beat Bethune-Cookman by 17, beat Prairie View by 21, and then they beat Howard by 4. So they only had a couple single-digit victories. They had 2, and they had basically 3 games won by 10 points or less. Everything else was at least 13 points or more. So they had some struggles early in games and played great second halves in most of these games. Um, they did everything that you would want a team to do in those situations. Offensively, they led the league in scoring offense. They were second in scoring defense. They were fourth in total offense. They were first in total defense. They were seventh in rushing offense. They were first in rushing defense. They were first in passing offense. They were first in passing defense. Offensively, they allowed 16 sacks, which was third. They led the league in sacks at 37. Interceptions, they were second. Were tied for first with 17. Fumble recoveries, they were ninth with 6. And like I said, they just they ran the table. This team hasn't lost but 2 conference games in 3 years. Um, multiple long winning streaks over that time. You just they were the pace setter and they never wavered. Even once they wrapped up the division early, they never wavered. And that's a testament to the job that Coach Simmons did. And even in the Celebration Bowl, where they fell behind 14-0. The defense dug in. Offense took a while to get going. They stayed the course. They never panicked. They never, got outside of what they normally would do. And that's why you have a coach who is coach of the year. And that's a clear cut number one in my book. So that's my number one coach. To recap, Coach Simmons number one, Coach McNair Coach Simmons number one, Coach Taylor number two, Coach McNair number three, Robinson 4, McDowell 5, Maynard 6, Woody 7, Wade 8, Hampton 9, Jackson 10, Dooley 11, and McKinney at 12. So that's our postseason coaching ranking. Before next season, we'll do this again because we got a couple new coaches, and so we'll rank them again. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC Sewell signing out, and I'm gonna catch you on the rebound. Peace.